Let's talk about Dr. Mundo. The Mundo rework is finally here, turning our favorite funny purple man into, well, an even funnier purple man with more interesting abilities. I got together with my community to test Mundo on the PvE, learning everything we could from a single play session as usual. Since this is the first rework I've covered, expect me to explain Dr. Mundo as though he's a brand new champion for the sake of people who might not have played a lot of him before the rework, though I'll still toss in a few comparisons to help more experienced players understand exactly how he's changed. As usual, this video is supposed to be a detailed primer to jumpstart your own learning, not a definitive guide. Dr. Mundo's passive makes him immune to the first immobilizing effect that hits him. When struck by CC, Mundo instead takes a chunk of percentage health damage and drops a canister on the ground. Picking it back up restores that health and more, and refunds a portion of this ability's cooldown. Enemies can walk on the canister to destroy it. While this means Mundo isn't permanently unstoppable, at later levels the cooldown does match the canister's flat cooldown refund, so he can have his passive up very often. Be warned though, this passive will make you aware of just how many knockups also have stuns on them afterwards, and since you're only immune to the first immobilize, you will sometimes get CC'd through your passive. Additionally, Mundo still has his old passive which causes him to regenerate a portion of his maximum health every second. This regen is not affected by the main passive's cooldown. Mundo's Q throws a cleaver in a single target linear skill shot that deals substantial percent current health magic damage and slows its target. It costs health to throw a cleaver, but if it hits a target it refunds some of its cost, or all of it if it hits a champion. This ability is practically unchanged from pre-rework Mundo down to multiple identical numbers. There's still no scaling of any kind on this ability. The only difference is that there's no extra health refund on kill anymore. Putting points into this ability increases the percent current health damage and its minimum damage. Mundo's W is a defensive steroid that doubles as an AoE damage over time effect. While Mundo's electrical field is active, he deals light damage to nearby enemies and stores a percentage of the post-mitigation damage he takes. When the ability expires, or when Mundo recasts to end it early, it deals a larger burst of damage and instantly heals Mundo for all of his grey health as long as he damaged a champion with W at any point. If he failed to damage a champion, he only gets half of his grey health back. Mundo's W can be cast at any time regardless of any animation he's in, but that doesn't mean you should frivolously layer it into combos. While its damage does add up on a squishy target, most of the damage it deals is due to the bonus health scaling on its recast. Since the substantial damage requires multiple items to come online, but the item is always useful for survivability, you should think of it first as defense. This ability is the most drastic change to Mundo's kit, so any old Mundo players will have to get used to casting this ability. Mundo's E is an auto attack reset with an additional passive component. Passively, Mundo gains free AD and gains even more the lower his health gets. Actively, Mundo's next attack deals bonus physical damage increased by his percentage of missing health. If this attack kills a unit, that unit goes flying in a line, dealing damage to all targets it hits. This makes Mundo's wave clear fairly effective if he can get a last hit with this effect. Essentially, Mundo's E grants him a gigantic amount of stats, which causes him to deal noticeably more damage when his health is lower, and the active component's damage also scales off his maximum health. For old Mundo players, this ability feels the same to cast as his old E, but you should be more deliberate with when you're casting it to optimize its damage, whether that means waiting for the AoE or just for your health to drop a little. Mundo's ultimate instantly heals him for a percentage of his missing health, then grants him movement speed, AD, and percent max health regen for its duration. This ability is also super simple. You press the button to be a better version of Mundo. Compared to his old ult, you regen less over time, but it instantly restores missing health instead of costing health. You can buff yourself to catch someone, you can buff yourself to handle team fights more effectively. Either way, it's important that you have this ability ready to go before anything major. While your gut instinct may be to put points into Mundo's cleaver, and I think you would be correct in some laning situations, the raw stats you gain from E drastically increase Mundo's combat prowess, so I imagine that's your default first ability to max. Mundo's W does feel excellent in the late game, mostly because the damage stored increases with ranks in the ability. I haven't tested this, but I suspect Mundo's baseline cleaver is good enough in many games for you to level W second. The extra survivability may make you more effective in the mid game. These are the probable skill orders I can see Mundo players taking. I think there will be a lot of value in tailoring Mundo's skill orders to specific game states. I would go into combos, but Mundo doesn't really have any. Get comfortable with your auto resets, add a point blank cleaver after E, and you're golden. Low combo potential is the price we pay for an auto-based champion with multiple defensive steroids. Dr. Mundo is a simple, health-based juggernaut who's equally as happy winning a poke war of attrition as he is simply running you down with his gigantic stats. If you're playing in top lane, look to harass your opponents with your ranged tools before a trade because you're not as strong early as other juggernauts. In jungle, you can choose your fights more easily, making it easier to assert your passive stats on your opponents. Since his whole kit rewards him with damage and regen for building health, Mundo wants to get as tanky as possible, taking a few levels to really get online, but becoming a huge problem afterwards. As a Juggernaut, Mundo wants to end the game before late game carries can get online, making his life quite a bit harder. As Mundo, he's on a more strict timer despite his strong scaling, because most tank busting options are based off percentage health damage, which affects Mundo more harshly. This means that levels 6 to 11 are the most important period in the game for him, because that's truly when Mundo gets to go where he pleases. Make it count. Old Mundo players may think that sounds familiar. That's because Mundo's identity and role in the game has not fundamentally changed at all with this rework. The only real impact is that he's more comfortable getting lower on HP before popping his ultimate. He's still the same champion with a new coat of paint and a slightly more dynamic kit. What this means is that every systemic feature that worked on old Mundo should also work on new Mundo. The same runes and items work, he's a better top laner than he was before, but he can still jungle effectively. This is why he was so much easier to figure out than the recent new champions. For the sake of players unfamiliar with old Mundo, we'll still run through some rune and item options. Mundo has good rune options in Resolve, Inspiration, and Precision. Inspiration is only taken as a secondary trait for approach velocity and magical footwear, which grants him the speed he needs to be an absolute monster during his strongest point in a game. A standard top lane rune page based on Resolve will usually run runes like Grasp of the Undying, Demolish, Bone Plating or Second Wind, and Unflinching. Revitalize has always been a bait rune for bad Mundo players, and I don't believe that's changed, because while it will now boost the healing from your W and initial ult cast, it does not affect health regeneration at all. Mundo needs fleet footwork in the jungle, so I would pair it with Triumph, Legend Tenacity, and Last Stand, and a secondary Resolve page. Experienced pre-rework Mundo players apparently know of situations in which Lethal Tempo or Hail of Blades could work, and there have been points in his history in which Arcane Comet is good. Remember the general rule of runes: the simpler the champion, the more rune options there are. Experiment. For items, scoop up all the tank items you can get your hands on. Grab Sunfire Aegis or Turbo Chem Tank as your mythic, depending on whether raw damage or movement speed will help you close out your game the fastest. Spirit Visage is a hugely appealing second item when it makes sense to buy, but if you can't justify an MR item, Thornmail, Randuin's Omen, or Deadman's Plate are all fairly effective. I can't stress enough how important Bramble Vest is against certain champions. It's fight winning. Items to purchase later include Titanic Hydra, Warmog's Armor, and Gargoyle Stoneplate. A note on Warmogs: it's great at dealing with poke and boosts Mundo's damage, so the niche situations in which you can get away with Warmog's second item feel great. Follow basic tank itemization on Mundo. Don't bother with AP burn items, and if you really want an AD fighter item, the only one I'd consider investigating beyond Titanic Hydra is Sterix Gauge. So that's the reworked Dr. Mundo. If you understood how he worked pre-rework, you'll have absolutely no trouble adjusting to the new version. He still has most of the same strengths and weaknesses, and you can take most of your existing Mundo knowledge into this new age of Purple Man. For players less familiar with Mundo, this means you'll have a lot of existing resources to help you learn. It is incorrect to assume that everything is exactly the same, because his new W, E, and updated R do have implications for his skill order and in-game choices. So please continue to experiment and report back with everything you learn about Dr. Mundo. I hope I was able to help you go where you please on the Rift when Dr. Mundo releases.